The movie begins by showing this young girl who's stuck in a bad situation. A really mean person kidnapped her because they want to know something from her. Even though she's going through a lot of pain, she's really strong and won't tell them anything. But then things change a lot. We're in a church in New York, and there's a man named Ezekiel Mannings. He looks kind of tough, and he's wearing an eye patch, which makes you think he's got lots of secrets. He's at a funeral, and his daughter Alice is with him. In this sad place, he tells Alice to be super careful and stay away from some big trouble that's coming their way. He says she should talk to Agent Bryant for help. Alice says yes, but before they can talk more, police sirens get really loud, and the FBI comes rushing in to arrest Ezekiel. Meanwhile, over in London, there's a young woman in riding gear. She's all set to ride her cool motorcycle home after her work, but her boss calls her and tells her to come back really fast, like in just 10 minutes. Now we're back with Ezekiel, but things aren't looking good for him. The police have him locked up at his own house, and he can't move around freely. His daughter Alice comes to visit and tells him some important news. He won't have to testify. Ezekiel relies on Alice, telling her to be really careful and that it's all up to her now. He gets really frustrated and complains to the FBI agents nearby who are watching him. Meanwhile, in a court in Washington, D.C., the judge gets ready. Inside, there's a witness who knows about the bad things Ezekiel did, and they're waiting to tell their story. They'll do it through a live video from somewhere secret in Europe. In a different part of London, police officers and Agent Simmons are helping Nick Murch, who's a key witness against Ezekiel. They're taking him to a safe place. Agent Simmons is in charge, and her FBI team is patiently waiting for an important package. Nick is worried about keeping his identity safe, but Agent Simmons tells him not to worry. She promises that once they get the package, they can start his video testimony and keep him anonymous. She also reminds Nick that Ezekiel can't do anything right now because he's stuck at home. Now let's catch up with Ezekiel at his home. He's relaxing and listening to some nice music. But then Alice comes in and tells him there's a visitor. Ezekiel picks up the phone, and he's really surprised because it's Agent Bryant calling. Agent Bryant tells him the important news that the courier is on the way. In the courtroom, everyone is really excited, waiting for things to start. Ezekiel is nervous, and he's counting the minutes until the delivery arrives. At the same time, Agent Simmons and her FBI team, along with witness Nick, are eagerly waiting for the courier to show up. There's a girl on a motorcycle rushing to get there. After a tense ride, she finally arrives with the package. Agent Simmons is super careful and checks the courier girl thoroughly before letting her in. Nick is getting more and more worried as he watches this, and he really needs to use the bathroom. Inside the room, one of the FBI agents opens the courier's bag, and suddenly poisonous gas comes out. It's really sad, but the gas kills all the other FBI agents there. Nick, hearing this scary stuff happening, locks himself in the bathroom to stay safe. At the same time, Simmons blames the courier girl and shoots her in the chest. Simmons, wearing a gas mask, goes to find Nick. But surprisingly, the courier girl fights back and takes Simmons' gas mask. She hurries to find Nick and quickly gets him out of the room. Simmons comes back, still shaken from their earlier fight, and starts shooting at them. The courier girl defends herself and injures Simmons in the shoulder, making him fall. Nick is really surprised and doesn't know if he can trust the girl he's with now. She tells him not to worry because she was wearing a special vest that stopped the bullets. She explains that someone framed him for the FBI agent's deaths and that she was only there to help him. Nick is curious about who she is, and she says she's just a courier who was also set up to make it look like she did something bad. Meanwhile, Simmons is in really bad shape and bleeding. He calls Agent Bryant and tells him that the courier and Nick got away. Back in the courtroom, everyone is getting more and more anxious. They've been waiting eagerly, but the live video from the witness still hasn't come in. As the courier girl is getting ready to leave, Nick asks her to take him with her, and she says yes. But as they try to escape in the parking area, Agent Bryant and his team show up out of nowhere. Bryant starts shooting at them, but the clever courier girl manages to drive away quickly. They go back to the same place they were before, and Agent Bryant is determined. He kills the building's security guard and locks down the whole building, even the elevators. He uses the building speakers to say that if the courier gives them Nick, they won't hurt her. Inside the building, the courier and Nick are stuck, trying really hard to find a way out, but all the doors are locked. At the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., Special Agent Roberts calls Bryant to ask about Simmons and his team. But Bryant isn't honest. He lies and says Simmons was involved with Ezekiel to get rid of the witness. Roberts takes this seriously and says he'll send a team called NC there in an hour, which is what they usually do in the FBI. Bryant doesn't want that, but Roberts insists they have to send the NC a team. Knowing the NC team is coming soon, Bryant tells his men to find the courier and Nick and get rid of them in an hour. They're armed with big guns. Meanwhile, at Ezekiel's house, he and his daughter Alice are having breakfast quietly when Bryant calls. Bryant tells Ezekiel they haven't finished the job of getting rid of the courier and Nick, but they plan to do it within an hour. Ezekiel says it's a really serious situation, and if they mess it up, there will be big problems. In the parking area, the courier and Nick hide behind a car. Nick, feeling really worried, asks the courier if she has any weapons, but sadly, she doesn't. She gives him her bulletproof vest to help. Meanwhile, in the courtroom, the judge gets impatient because the testimony is taking too long. The judge decides to postpone the case hearing for another day. Back at Ezekiel's house, Alice first tries to trick the FBI agent who's watching them, but then she stands her ground and tells him they're not afraid of him. In the parking lot, the courier sees one of Bryant's team members and deals with him quickly. She gets the team member's special gun and some communication headphones they used to talk to Bryant. In Ezekiel's house, the FBI agent tells Ezekiel that they'll be leaving in an hour because they heard that the charges against Ezekiel were dropped. Ezekiel acts surprised, even though he's not really. Back in the parking area, the courier and Nick hide inside a car. The courier is determined and tries to start the car's engine. Feeling the tension, Nick decides to tell the courier something important. He used to work for Ezekiel and saw him commit a murder. The car engine starts, and it makes a loud noise that alerts one of Bryant's guys. The agent gets scared and starts shooting at the car. But the courier is really skilled, and she dodges the bullets and runs over the shooter with the car. The gunfire noise brings more of Bryant's men over, and they shoot a lot at the car, thinking the courier and Nick are still inside. But just in time, the two of them manage to get out of the car, leaving the guys chasing them really confused. Seeing a good chance, the courier asks Nick for a lighter and uses it to set fire to the leaking fuel from the car. The explosion surprises some of Bryant's guys and hurts them. Bryant, seeing all this fire and chaos, is really shocked and worried, so he calls in a really skilled person to help. Meanwhile, Nick and the courier girl are determined to get away. They run into more of Bryant's guys and have a tough fight with them. Nick gets hurt, but he can still walk, so they keep trying to escape. The expert that Bryant called for arrives in a car because he got the urgent message. At the same time, Nick and the courier find a room to hide in. They really need to stay out of sight because Bryant's guys are still looking really hard for them. Inside the room, Nick asks the courier about how good she is at fighting and using weapons. She tells him she learned these skills in the army, but had to leave because something really sad happened. Suddenly, one of Bryant's guys shoots the door with a shotgun. Quick as lightning, the courier and Nick escape through a ventilation duct, leaving Bryant really angry and worried. They go to the rooftop together. Out of nowhere, the expert Bryant brought shoots Nick in the chest with a sniper rifle. Nick starts bleeding. The courier acts fast, helping Nick with his wound before taking him down to the parking area. She hides him safely in a car. The courier is amazing at fighting. She takes out some of Bryant's guys and tricks another one using the sprinklers. With her trusty gun and fighting skills, she deals with the rest of Bryant's team, even though she gets hurt too. She manages to reach her motorcycle and escapes quickly. But a special operative sends a drone after her. The courier is really good at dodging the drone, and she hides behind a car. Then, she surprises the drone and takes it down. But just as she does that, the special operative grabs her from behind and chokes her until she passes out. The scene changes, and we're back where we started. The courier is tied to a chair, and Bryant won't stop trying to get Nick's location for her. It's a really tense moment. Bryant calls for Nick on a loudspeaker and says he'll hurt the courier if Nick doesn't come out. Nick comes out of hiding, and this is the important moment. The courier manages to free herself just as Bryant is about to shoot Nick. She takes the gun from him and tells Nick to run and save himself. Bryant gets back on his feet and starts searching hard for Nick. At the same time, the special operative is following the courier girl closely. They have a big fight, but the clever courier girl uses a smoke grenade to make a smoky cover and escapes without being seen. With Bryant, Nick manages to hurt him with a stab, but Bryant shoots Nick back, making Nick run away in a hurry. Meanwhile, the courier girl has a tough battle with the special operative, but wins by using a car antenna as a weapon. But then Bryant finds Nick and tries to kill him. Just when things look really bad, the courier girl comes back on her motorcycle, takes out Bryant, and saves Nick just in time. Nick has lost a lot of blood, so she rushes him to a nearby hospital. At the hospital, Nick asks her name, but she won't tell him. After making sure Nick is okay, she leaves on her motorcycle, leaving behind a sense of mystery. The scene changes to Nick, who's getting better in the hospital. Agent Roberts comes to visit unexpectedly. Roberts starts asking Nick about the courier girl, but Nick says he doesn't know anything about her. Then Roberts gets a weird call telling him to get rid of Nick. He goes into Nick's room, but Nick has disappeared mysteriously. In a surprising twist, both Nick and the courier girl suddenly show up, and the story ends in a surprising way. So the moral of the story is sometimes it's best to run away from bad guys on motorcycles, but if you do, don't forget to set their cars on fire first. It might just save the day.